Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest, absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs.
Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. This is a really good one, in my rarely humble opinion. A couple of weeks ago, I got to interview an herbalist friend of mine named Sarah Donaghue. And we'll get into that in just a moment. You're going to love Sarah. She is super knowledgeable, very bright and bubbly and friendly, and just really knows her stuff. And I really enjoy talking with her and have followed her for many years. So, but before I get into that, of course, I would be remiss if I did not mention that it's just before Thanksgiving. Now, a couple weeks ago, we discussed about how to smoke a turkey. You didn't hear it? This is my favorite way of cooking turkey. All right, so if you have a turkey that you've raised, if you have a wild turkey, you will probably want to brine the bird overnight before you put it on the smoker. If you buy a store-bought turkey, it is more than likely pre-brined. It should say that on the package. Honestly, I would prefer if they did not sell turkeys pre-brined. The reason they brine them is because the turkey soaks up the salt water and usually has some other flavors added to it. Not a big fan of artificial flavors, but um, if you look around, maybe you'll find one that has all natural ingredients. I was lucky enough to find a couple this year that did. Local grocery store had a very good sale price, and I got a couple commercial turkeys and put them in the freezer. I don't have to eat everything in the wild, but the brine that they use in those commercial turkeys is used to increase the weight. The turkey soaks up the brine and it weighs more. I think of that as sort of a little bit of a cheat. I also think of that as how sanitary was that brine? How long were they sitting in it? You know? But if you, one way or another, you're probably going to want to brine your bird. And I just do a salt water brine. I do not get fancy whatsoever. Um, some people like to do salt and sugar, especially for a smoked turkey. That's your business. You can flavor it with however you want. Throw some hot sauce in there. Throw some Creole seasonings. Whatever you like. I would not, though, go with, say, buttermilk or something. The only reason you want to brine something in buttermilk when it comes to poultry is if you're going to fry it. The skin actually undergoes a chemical change when it's brined in buttermilk, and it causes the flour to adhere to the skin. The two basically become one. Makes for a nice crispy fried chicken. And I suppose you could do that with turkey, but I probably wouldn't. I might do that with a chicken fried steak or something, pork chop even, but maybe a turkey leg if I was just doing a drumstick. But I'm getting off on a tangent. Anyway, brine that bird overnight. I like to do hickory coals, a mix of hickory and oak. Oak gives a nice even heat, not a lot of flavor with oak actually, but hickory is a very flavorful aromatic smoke. The last one I did a couple of weeks ago, I thought I had some wood chips and lump charcoal on hand. I did not. I had just enough to get things going, so I ended up mainly smoking it with dogwood, and it was very good. I've been carving us a lot of spoons out of dogwood because someone cut one down and I just picked up trunk and a few branches of the tree off the side of the road. Hard wood to carve, incredibly hard, incredibly knotty. I mean, it's been quite a workout for my hands, to say the least. Makes beautiful spoons, though. It's a very white wood with a fine, smooth grain once you get all those knots out of there. But I had all these dogwood chips, so I actually just took a few pieces of lump charcoal that I had left, got them going in the smoker, and I just kept adding green dogwood. I was really, I was surprised. I didn't know how this was going to turn out. Would I be able to control the temperature as well that way? I want a nice cool smoke. We don't want to go over like 250 degrees at most, and we really want to keep it lower than that. And yeah, it worked really well. The turkey, I let it go a little too long, got a little dry, but it was really delicious. And honestly, um, I was able to share some with my mother, and she will not eat meat. It is not well done. So she liked the dry turkey. And I have to admit, the flavor was good. So anyway, it was just a matter of salt and pepper on the turkey, put it on the smoker, keep the temperature. And this is a barbecue pit. This is not like a smoker like with an offset box or something. I literally just turned an old grill into a sort of a redneck barbecue pit. So when it comes to smoking a turkey, you look like I said, it's going to be a cooler temp, and you're looking at going about 5 to 8 hours, just depending on the size of the bird. The longer you can go at the lower temp, the better. If say you got out there and you started smoking your turkey, and you'd only gone an hour or two, and a thunderstorm came up, no problem. You finish in the oven; it will absorb plenty of smoke. Now, I love smoked turkey, honestly. The downside to smoked turkey is you can't eat the skin. Doing it in the oven gives you that nice crispy brown skin that everybody loves. Doing it in the oven, roasting it, also enables you to give some more flavors to it. You can roast it with some vegetables. I love to put a few onions in there, maybe some carrot, celery. I'm a celery fanatic. I put celery in everything. Um, turnips, parsnips, radishes, any good root vegetables, a couple potatoes, whatever. It's going to add flavor and be really good. And of course, the other thing about roasting the oven is you get all the pan juices, the drippings. Use those in making your gravy. Remember, when we make gravy, we don't want a lot of fat. You're going to want to skim some of that fat off, a lot of it, really. You're going to then you can use a little of the turkey fat, or you can use the fat of your choice. It can be oil or butter. Get it going in the pan, add equal parts flour, make your roux, as we discussed a couple weeks ago, and then all those defatted drippings from that pan are what you will use to make your gravy. Put them in there, stir them in there, and you want to be sure you get all of them. I mean, you might want to put that pan, take the bird out, of course, take the vegetables out, put it on a burner, bring it up to temp and pour a little water in there. Just scrape the bits off the bottom of the pan. Get everything, and then put it in with your roux and make that wonderful, rich brown turkey gravy. It's delicious. You can also take those vegetables if they're overcooked, if you don't no longer want to use them. I usually eat them anyway. I think they're pretty good, actually. But if to your taste they've gotten a little overdone, hit them with a stick blender, hit them with an emulsion blender, throw them in a blender, or just take a potato masher and mix them up. I mean, mash them up real fine and mix that into your gravy, and use it almost as a thickener, and it's really good. Or you can use it as a soup base. So, turkey, of course, is absolutely delicious. It's kind of hard to go wrong if you don't overcook it or undercook it to the point you're giving somebody food poisoning. You can kind of season it up the way you like, right? But one dish I take issue with is green bean casserole. Now, I love casserole. Being part French, I'm a casserole fanatic. Anything cooked on casserole is going to be a hit for me. Love it. Absolutely love casserole. What I don't like is canned soup. The story behind green bean casserole is that the Campbell's Corporation, that's very much based here in North Carolina, they're a big part of our culture. They do a lot for charity, and I'm not criticizing Campbell's whatsoever. They basically support all our food banks and fund our churches. So, I'm not criticizing Campbell's. I just don't like the taste of canned soup. They had a promotional. where they said use as many Campbell's products and come up with a dish for Thanksgiving. And a lady came up with green bean casserole using canned green beans, canned cream of mushroom soup, the canned French fried onions, and all that. And it's tasty. Um, before I developed an aversion to sort of the metallic taste of canned soups, I loved it. But after I developed that aversion, I had to come up with a green bean casserole that I can enjoy. So I just went back to old techniques. Let's say you wanted to make a from scratch green bean casserole, like I adore. And I might want to kind of tailor it a little to my taste by using bacon in it. I'm not going to do the French fried onions on top, but I would love to have some fried bacon in there. There will be onions in the casserole. And heck, if I had some French fried onions or if I made some onion rings, I might throw them on there anyway. But let's just get down to that basic creamy goodness. First thing I'm going to do is fry up some bacon. And then I'm going to use that bacon fat to cook in. So fry up your bacon, get it to your taste. A lot of people like it a little crispier than I do. I kind of eat my bacon a little on the raw side, but I mean, you know, people always tell me I'm going to get food poisoning, but I like my bacon a little rare. But for this, let's say I get it a little crispy. Take it out of the pan. I'm going to go ahead and cook my green beans, just fresh green beans right there in that pan. Put them in that bacon fat, fry them up a little bit. They're going to finish cooking in the casserole. I just want to get a good seasoning on them. Then I'm gonna I may have to add a little more fat at this point, depends on how much fat stayed attached to the green beans when I took them out, or how much bacon I cooked actually. I may add some butter or olive oil, whatever you want. I'm gonna go with butter because it's the holidays. I'm gonna go ahead and brown up some mushrooms. You brown mushrooms just like meat. Slice them, make sure they're dry, put them in the pan spaced apart, and then brown them on either side. Don't crowd your pan. Don't allow them to make steam and prevent browning. Then I'm going to go ahead and cook up some onions. So now I got bacon, I got beans, I got mushrooms, and I got onions, and that's about it, right? We're going to brown that up really nicely, get some good flavor on those vegetables, salt and pepper to taste. Of course, I may throw in a little celery salt or Creole seasoning, to my taste. You do what you like to your taste. Either push the vegetables to the side or scoop them out, whatever. Then we need equal parts fat and flour. We're going to make a roux. Same as we talked about making a roux for the gravy. It's the exact same process. So I'm going to go ahead and put a spoonful, depending on how much I'm making. It could be a teaspoonful, it could be a tablespoonful, whatever, of butter and the same amount of plain all-purpose flour. Bring it together into a light brown roux. Get rid of the raw flavor of the flour. It should come together nice and smoothly, and it'll be a little bubbly when it's ready. And now we're going to pour in some chicken broth or turkey broth, whatever you got, right? If you had that turkey and you boiled the carcass and you made a good broth or stock, pour it in there, stir everything around, bring that roux together into a nice creamy gravy consistency. And then we're going to stir in some milk or cream, heavy cream if you prefer. And again, we're just going to bring it together into a nice creamy consistency. Let it get about, I'm going to say, half as thick as you want your final casserole to be. And you've just made a cream of mushroom and onion and green bean and bacon soup, right? You just put it all back in there together. This is a cream of soup at this point. Put it all together in a casserole dish. Cover it with some breadcrumbs. Again, if you want to use the French fried onions, that's cool. They are tasty, I have to admit. And that is one thing that's a little tricky to do at home unless you're using a deep fryer. And, why make things harder for yourself on the holidays? We already got onions in there. But if you have some, go for it. And then pop it in the oven and bake it up golden brown and delicious. When it's done, let's just say you baked it for about an hour, all those vegetables will be perfectly cooked through. The flavors will have all come together. The moisture will have evaporated out, so you now have a thick sauce holding your casserole together. And that, my friends, that is a green bean casserole that is good for you, tastes far better than anything that comes out of a can. And that's something you can serve to your family and be truly proud of it. Little variation I do sometimes at the end, just before it's done, say I've got 15 minutes left to cook. Pull it out real quick, put some pecans or pecans, however you like to pronounce it, on top, halved. You could use walnuts, I'm sure, hickory nuts, whatever you got, right? We don't want to burn those nuts up. So you're going to wait till close to the end, put the nuts on top, sprinkle some grated cheddar cheese or the cheese of your choice, pop it back in the oven. Let it finish cooking. Those nuts will just brown and caramelize a little bit. The cheese will get all brown and bubbly. And yeah, it's pretty fantastic. All right, y'all, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And now we're going to talk herbs. Remember, all my recipes are available in my book, The Omnivore's Guide to Home Cooking. But this show is all about herbs. So let's talk with Sarah. Hey, y'all. Today I have a very special guest. This is a friend of mine, Sarah Donaghue. She is an herbalist in Cornwall, England, which is on the coast and very beautiful and very, well, maybe somewhat of a more harsh environment than you might think of when you think of England. It has a bit more seasonal differences. And she has a little bit of Celtic heritage, so we get along very well. I've been a fan of her for quite a bit of time, several years actually. I took one of her classes through the Grow Network on bitters, and I'm sure she'll talk about bitters. Y'all know that's a passion of mine. She's also been doing a lot of plant walks and rediscovering all these, I guess you'd call them what, physic gardens? And also, she's very into Bach flower remedies, which you may remember from our discussion on homeopathy. Bach flower remedies are really, really interesting. She has a great Substack newsletter, and I hope she will promote that. And I believe she's will be starting a podcast very soon as well. So she's entering into the wild world of the words. So y'all give a big welcome to Sarah. And Sarah, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got into herbal medicine and all the wonderful things you're up to.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me on your wonderful podcast, Judson. I feel very honoured to talk to you today. As you said, we've known each other for a long time, but often through emails, and it's only recently really that we've got to chat face to face. So it's just been really lovely to get to know about all about your work, and I feel very privileged to be here today. So thank you for that. Um, so yes, I've been a herbalist now for about 13 years. Um, Before that, in a previous life, I was a school teacher. So I've always loved education, and I feel that is somewhat of a calling for me to, you know, to be a guardian, if you like, for herbal medicine and to make sure that it is passed down to future generations in a good way. Um, I'm a member of the Herb Society here in the UK, and I'm an ambassador for them, which I really take pride in that role. Mrs. Lale, who was the very, very first lady who set up the Herb Society, was actually married to a doctor, but in those days, Mrs. Lale, as being a woman, wasn't allowed to study medicine. So she very often would open the door to people that would come seeking help from her husband. And if he wasn't there and away on a call, she would quite likely go out into the garden and get some herbs or make them a herbal cup of tea. And she was very knowledgeable about herbs and very passionate about herbal education. So I feel that I'd like to follow in those footsteps, and that's one of the reasons why I write my Substack newsletter, because I feel very passionate that within the space of one generation, it's very easy, isn't it, to lose touch with those recipes and those old ways. I've been doing some talks recently for different groups. One of them was a Women's Institute here in the UK, and there was a wonderful lady who attended that talk who was almost in tears at the end of it. When I was talking, I thought she looked quite cross. I was thinking, oh goodness, what has she got to say about this young person coming in and telling her all about these remedies that she knows everything about? And she said, actually, I was so interested in that talk because all of those recipes are the things that my grandma used to show me, and I'd just forgotten about them. And I thought, I wonder if she talks to her grandchildren about those recipes, or is it too old fashioned? And although we're seeing a lot of Instagram folks and all of these other wonderful things and people promoting herbal medicine, and it's great that it's moving forward and evolving in a modern way, I still feel that it's really important to remember our roots and where we come from, and that it's not just a trendy buzzword to be into herbs because it's cool and we can take all these wonderful pictures of jars with teas and looking pretty. It's got such a long history, not just in the UK, obviously, throughout the world. Where you are, the things that you write about on your wonderful Substack newsletter. Every week I open that and think, my goodness, I just didn't know anything about it. And you always make me feel rather insignificant when it comes to my knowledge. But I think, none of us own herbal medicine. There are enough sick people in the world for all of us. And I think the sharing of knowledge is so important. But at the same time, it's not just something to give away lightly or to give away freely. Is here's a free gift and a free recipe, because people really do need to understand what it is that you are doing. And a little knowledge can sometimes be dangerous, I think, when people claim to be experts on things. Like, I've been doing it for 13 years. I would never claim to be an expert on it because there's so much to learn. Yes, I'm still learning, so I still consider myself to be a student even after all of this time. But I'm getting older and realising that it's quite important that these skills are passed on to future generations. So that's really my role at the moment, I feel, is moving away from the consultation office and into the realm of teaching people about the land and about the old ways, and keeping that history alive.
Well, you do a great job. I mean, and I have to tell y'all, Sarah's newsletter is fantastic. It's well written, first of all. It's entertaining. It it brings you into her world when you read it. And I just sit here being very jealous because I want to be in that world very often. But speaking of a little knowledge being dangerous, I just got a question recently from someone, and this is a difference we would have in of being on two different continents, about mistletoe. Now, mistletoe in the European and the British tradition is a completely different species than American mistletoe. We often write of mistletoe, we don't put the Latin name down. Well, someone said, mistletoe is good for this and that and this and that. And yes, it is. The European mistletoe is quite good for high blood pressure and various things. The American mistletoe has the opposite effect. It raises blood pressure, it causes contractions, and just a small amount will kill you. So when we talk about a little knowledge being a bit dangerous if we don't really take the time, to educate people on those plants. I can't tell you how many books on my shelf you pick up and it just says mistletoe is good for this, mistletoe is good for that, and they don't differentiate between European mistletoe and American mistletoe.
I've had a very clear example of that this year, actually. On one of my herb walks, there is a wonderful patch of wild garlic. I mean, you can smell, it's really all the way through the woodlands. And it was on, quite trendy for people to, let's make the wild garlic pesto, let's all go down and grab handfuls and carrier bags and as much as we can get of this. And there were, people getting quite cross because this place, which was a beautiful woodland, there was just people up and down with the carrier bags, but uprooting all of this garlic and thinking it was like a supermarket. Unbeknownst to them that, lords and ladies and other, lily of the valley, things like that, growing in the trees, which, if you're just picking by the handful and not slowing down and taking leaf by leaf and being mindful and gathering, you will have, you may be very well in the A&E if you're lucky with a heart attack or fatality, and people are gleefully whizzing this up into pesto. And you think, yes, great.
Oh, it's delicious, yeah.
And even with the elderberries now this year, it was heartbreaking to see the trees. The elderberries are so high up, you would need some sort of abseiling equipment to get hold of them, because everybody has been picking all of the flowers to the heart's content at eye level, leaving nothing. So of course there's no berries, but they just see elderflower is good for this. Well, let's have this. and not realising the consequences that if you pick the flowers, then there will be no berries because it's all a quite immediate gratification.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to, on the one hand, discourage people from learning because that's the whole point. The issue I feel is that people can sometimes feel that because they've read something about it on Instagram or on a blog post even, that is a safe and a free for all for us all to go and
Sure. And you mentioned lily of the valley. The wild garlic. You might call it ramsons. We call it ramps. It's the same thing, same plant, grows right here on the creek right by my house, and I love it. Every year I go out and gather. But you are absolutely correct. It can look very much like lily of the valley. And lily of the valley has a digitalis-like effect. It can slow your heart to a very dangerous place. If you take too much, if you eat, I should say, too many of those lily of the valley leaves, thinking they are ramps, you will die. You will end up in the hospital. The same thing is true here with skunk cabbage. Skunk cabbage is one of our natives, and it looks very much like false hellebore when it is immature, when it's just coming out of the ground. And if you eat false hellebore, you will be dead before you get back to your car. It is that poisonous. Seriously. It's just next to, say, poison hemlock in toxicity, or aconite, monkshood, wolfsbane. And of course, wolfsbane can look very much like geranium when it's just coming up out of the ground. You may think you're out there picking, what do you English call it? The herb Robert, I believe that's right.
Robert Peeps on the wall. Yeah, I love that one. And actually, even that is, I've got a very old book here from, I think she's died now, the Herbalist. It's an Australian herbalist, How to Use Herbs in Your Everyday Life. And it's a brilliant book. And there's about 20 pages just on Herb Robert in that. It's a wonderful plant.
Oh, yes,
But
yeah,
I say, a
absolutely.
member of the geranium family. And you have to have your eyes open. You can't just go picking willy-nilly.
Yeah,
And even if you do pick Herb Robert, then small, 2 or 3 leaves is enough. You
yeah.
need to go mad with that. So I think that's a really important message to get across to people is if you are foraging, go with a guide and
Hmm.
also be respectful and leave something for the birds.
Oh,
Leave
certainly.
something.
And I think it's good to, whatever the patch is you're harvesting, wherever you are, wait a year, give it 2 years, come back and look in different seasons, and to make sure that what you think is geranium is not monkshood. Make sure, uh, and really when you do that, when you take time to observe, you see far more plants than you do when you're just walking through.
And another thing, actually, even when you do have the right plants, I've seen people picking rocks on fire or on the coast here
Mhm.
and other, sea purslane, and there is a polluted river which
Yeah,
runs right by there,
yeah,
and oh, look at this beautiful scenery, look at all this, we can forage this, we can eat this, but should you eat it?
yes, exactly.
Forage it?
Yeah. Horsetail equisetum is a big issue here because it pulls toxins up so readily. If it's anywhere near contaminated water or soil, you would think it's a perfectly healthy plant and you're in a just perfectly idyllic pastoral scene, and that horsetail can be absolutely full of heavy metals, mercury and such, lead, and it can be it can be a real issue. But to more pleasant topics.
I know, I was just thinking that, gosh, I've got a bit dark, how about we
Hey, we got to put
go?
our disclaimers out there first, right?
Yes, I think actually it's important, isn't it? I think one of the issues is that maybe the education isn't necessarily there, and people that want to go on foraging or herb walks, it's quite difficult to find a knowledgeable person that can show you all of those things. And really, many of the courses here in the UK are either based in London or there's a really good college in Dublin as well. And I think it's becoming rarer to find really high quality courses where people can actually show you these things. So again, it's the importance, isn't it, of things like your podcast and the newsletter to as an ongoing, thing for people to read and educate themselves about the things that they should and shouldn't look out for.
Well, I try, and I know you do as well. I was so fortunate to learn from the older folks in the mountains. And these people were almost 100 years old when I was 15 and started learning from them. And they lived way down dirt roads with no electricity or plumbing. And it was like stepping back in time 200 years, literally. And that is not available to the current generation. Those people are gone now. But so we have to do what we do in writing. We have to do what we do
That's
in the
right.
digital media.
Also, even just showing people. I can remember reading a book, and there was a lady in this story, and the child had said, "Well, can you tell me the name of that plant?" And she said, "No, I've just used it for all of this time. I don't need to know
Yeah.
the name. That is the plant."
Yeah.
Get obsessed, don't we, with Latin, all of these things and Latiners, but I think actually using your eyes and your senses is much better than going to a book.
Sure.
There was a program on television the other day about, it was really to do with the weather, and it was about a fishing boat that had got lost, and they'd invested in all of this really expensive equipment to show them where they were and which way the wind was blowing and everything. And the boat got lost in a storm, and there was one person on the boat who said, "Oh, don't worry, stop looking at your equipment. I can see that there's this bird over here, and I can see which direction the waves are going, and we can't be far from the shore if we just keep going in this direction." And it's so focused on the outside source telling us. We've kind of given our power away, haven't we? Because we're not
Sure.
using
Yeah.
senses in. How do we know? Does it taste good? Does it look good? Has this plant got mold on it? Where is it growing?
Hmm. Yeah, people can't even use maps now. They just go by their phones. The idea of sitting down and smelling the plant, tasting a bit of the leaf, make sure you got your ID right. And I collect a lot of wild mushrooms, and it's even more important with those mushrooms to really get your nose in there and make sure. I mean, it looks like a chanterelle. Is it a chanterelle? Let's find out. It could be what we call jack-o'-lanterns, which actually glow in the dark. Have you ever seen one? These mushrooms actually glow in the dark. They're amazing.
Love to
Yeah,
see.
quite poisonous though.
I must admit, mushrooms is something that there are three mushrooms I work with, and I know them really well, and I don't kind of veer outside that. I know where my limit is. I think there's a lot to be said, isn't there, to get out of the book and into nature and really experience, and as you say, throughout the year, knowing what that plant looks like in the spring, in the summer,
Hmm.
when it's coming back in the winter. It's so important, and but that's what I find is so fun about herbal medicine, because nature is so varied in its nuance.
Yes.
You have to get down to that level and slow right down in order to learn from it.
Yeah, it's endlessly fascinating. Endless.
And
But okay, speaking of which, before we wander too far off our trail, uh, you've been writing a lot about Bach flower remedies. Tell me all you've learned, or at least as much as you can tell me.
well, it's a funny thing because I I've used batch flower remedies before in the past, but never made them. And I went on a course where the lady showed us how to make the flower remedies from daffodils. And I thought, oh, that is such a simple process. But then in the back of my mind, I was thinking, is it going to be effective? Is it going to
Hmm.
work? And it's always about coincidence, isn't it? I was invited to go to a sound bath, which I've never been to before. And I thought, oh, this is great. I'll just go and lie down on a mat, have a sleep, and, nice, restful half an hour where I can just drift off and have a bit of a relaxation. And when I came out of that sound bath, it took me about 4 weeks to recover. It was so powerful. The energy and the way you almost feel like the vibrations are changing the nature of the
Hmm.
cells in your body.
Yeah.
And it really opened my mind to, hey, Sarah, you don't know everything. I really thought, this is something to experiment. And so I went back to the back flower remedies, and it's because it is all about vibration, isn't it? And I had a go at making some of my own, and I potentised one of my patients' medicines prescriptions with the flower remedy, And even though it was a repeat prescription, adding the flower remedy, they came back and saw me the next week and said, "What did you put in that medicine? I feel 100% better." And it was the same prescription, but with the addition of the flower remedy to potentize it. And I thought, this is something to really look at. And I can't explain it. I don't know how it works. And I certainly don't claim to. But it's like quantum physics, isn't it? There's
Yeah.
things that we just are beyond our scope. And why do sunflowers track the sun? It's the chi of the energy of the plant itself as an individual. Not just gathering from another willow tree, but going to that willow tree, the one that you climbed as a child. I really feel that, and even when we look at the field of mushrooms now, things that are happening in that world regarding the mycelium and the communication between plants and their saplings and the different mushrooms in the forest, they know, they can hear you coming as we're walking. There's so much more that's beyond our understanding. But I think to just rubbish it and say, "Oh no, it doesn't work," is really doing the nature an injustice, because we're really, to be that arrogant to say that we know.
Oh, yeah.
I can't really put it into words. I hope I've explained it in a way that doesn't sound like a crazy lady.
No. I got into a little bit of this with my homeopathy friend, Tori Lee up in Canada. And I had to kind of laugh a little bit because I had looked up on the internet the Bach flower remedies. It's BACH, by the way, y'all. And just like the composer. Anyway, I looked it up, and Wikipedia, of course, says there's nothing to it. It's all junk. And they say that it's really just the brandy you're drinking along with, and you'll know how funny that is because it's so diluted. There's like no alcohol in the actual remedy in its final state. But Wikipedia claims people are just getting drunk. And what we
It's not
discussed,
close. And this is the thing, isn't it? It's not, you're not drinking, even if you drank the whole. I must say, some people do pronounce it batch flower
yes, of course,
remedies. I call it back flower remedies because that's the way I always, well, when I read about them and saw them, that's how I
sure,
started calling them. So, but just in case somebody wants to mention that that's not how it's pronounced, there are different ways, aren't there?
right.
But I mean, even if you drank the whole of the bottle, which I think is 10 ml,
Hmm.
how drunk are you going to get?
Hey, we're Celts. We have a little bit more of a tolerance, right? But, but no, talking with Tori, she gave me a really good correlation. She said that she has a friend who's actually a nuclear physicist, and he was talking about how water is such a sympathetic substance. And you know how they take the homeopathic remedies and they percuss them, they get that vibration, and that the okay, so from a physics perspective, all matter, everything, you and me, everything about us, and everything we see and touch and feel is really just energy vibrating at a certain frequency. So what he believes as a physicist is when you take those very diluted, almost essences of the plant and combine them with the water and percuss them, that the water is essentially taking on the vibration of the energy of that plant. And that's sort of the secret of homeopathy, if you want to look at it that way.
The way I kind of think of it is, if I was in a room and I had my back to the door and a famous person walked in, without even turning round, I would know that something had happened because of the frisson, if you like.
Right,
And I
right.
think introducing the remedy into that prescription is almost like telling the other herbs that, oh look, something else is in the mix.
Right. Well, and like going back to the old herbal medicine of Saint Hildegard von Bingen, she would have loved the Bach or Bach flower remedies because she was all about the viriditas, about the qualities of light and color and all that. And um, yeah, I mean, the energetic quality of those remedies is very important.
And some of the patterns as well, when you see those vibrating plates, and they put sand on them, and they play different musical notes, and the patterns are so intense. And in some of the churches here as well, you can see some of those patterns, and you do wonder if there's a link between the alchemy of the plants and the patterns that are in the stonework that people
absolutely.
on some sort of intuitive level that we've, again, how many generations have gone by that we may have forgotten this knowledge because it wasn't passed on.
Exactly.
Who's to say that there isn't knowledge there it's just been lost?
Sure. What is Stonehenge after all? I mean, how many people have sat there and wondered, what is Stonehenge, right? But then when they see how it lines up with the seasons and the movement of the sun and everything, it becomes, very clear that we had ancestors that were far more observant of nature than we are.
As herbal medicine is such a nuanced study, isn't it? You could study it for your whole entire life and not even scratch the surface of what there is to learn.
Absolutely. All right, so the way we first got associated was talking about bitters. You did a course on bitters, and I know that's a very important subject to you. You actually are the one that got me into bitters, and bitters was actually how I started my podcast. So,
I didn't know that.
yeah, I think my first episode was on the Swedish bitters, and we kind of and some of the cocktail bitters, and different ones, and about how it improved my asthma so much. My asthma had gotten so bad that when I would eat, I would have an attack. And so taking a sip of bitters before a meal would get the digestive juices going, and my body didn't think my food was an invading organism that it had to fight off. So tell me about how you got into bitters and some of your favorite bitter herbs and maybe a formula or two if you don't mind.
Well, way before I trained as a herbalist, I had a job in quite a high-end bar, and I remember at the time thinking, because I've always loved brown bottles or anything, to do with all different glass bottles and colours and things. And behind the bar was a bottle of Angostura bitters.
Oh, my favorite.
And I've never seen that before. And I remember saying, what is that? Does anybody ever order it? Because nobody had asked for it, and it was just sat on the back. And I remember the guy who was my boss at the time said, that's in case anybody is getting too drunk or they're not feeling very well. Give them a shot of that and they'll just come back to life. You won't believe it. And I always thought, oh, that's just, load of rubbish. Anyway, one day, the event did actually happen, and there was somebody who'd had too much drink, not feeling too well. They made them a shot of this Angostura bitters, and it was literally like they just came back to life. I really can't believe this. And then anyway, time goes on. And then when I was a student, I came across a really lovely lady from, I will give her a mention actually, she's called Christine, and she's from Granary Herbs, which is based in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And her herbs come from a walled garden, never been, sprayed with any chemicals. It's absolutely beautiful, pristine, gorgeous piece of land. And she makes very small batch Swedish bitters, which is a classic formula for digestive health. And I thought, this sounds lovely. I'm going to try some of these bitters. And I remember at the time, for me in particular, I had really bad skin.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, those hot red spots that are very obvious and you feel embarrassed. And so I was, let's give this a try. Not knowing much about herbs, but we'll just go for my skin, even though it is a liver herb, classically, a liver formula. And lo and behold, it worked absolute wonders for me. And that was how I really got into writing and being interested in liver health. And I did actually publish a very small book on herbs for liver health. It was from Herbery Books. It's out of print at the moment, but I'm hoping that that's going to be rerun shortly. And that in the course of writing that book was around about the time when I got involved with the Grow Network, and they were looking for people to give talks on various topics. And because I was into herbs and bitters and the liver, I thought, well, okay, we'll talk about that. And a friend of mine who is in Australia now had developed a liver detox program, for want of a And she said, I'll share this formula with you and give it a go. So from there, I then began to develop my own formula for liver support, which I'm happy to tell you what is in there. I use a combination of equal parts milk thistle, which is Stilibum marianus, rosemary, rosmarinus, and Schisandra chinensis, and dandelion, good old dandelion.
Gotta have that.
Never underrate the dandelion. And it's really nice actually, because I find some of the bitter formulas are quite cold, and with the addition of the rosemary, it just takes the edge off the coldness. And rosemary is very underrated as a liver herb. I think, provided you're not having liver issues that are rising and giving, things like headaches, migraines, as long as you're not, suffering with those kinds of hot conditions, that formula works really quite nicely, because it's not so, well, it's like you take the bitters and it makes your cheeks sing, doesn't it? Even just thinking about the bitters, you just need to think about it and you can feel your saliva glands getting to work. But with this one, I think the Schisandra as well, because it's a berry, the 5-flavoured berry, it makes quite a nice balanced formula. So I use that liver formula as part of a programme. I wouldn't recommend just using it every day. Well, I wouldn't recommend using anything every day. Even a shampoo, you soon get used to the same thing, don't you? But that is a really good standby to have on hand for things like Christmas, New Year, and I take it before you go out. Not that I'm recommending people go out and deliberately get a hangover, but as somebody who is from a good old Murphy Donaghue background, I won't say I don't mind having the odd partaking in the odd
Absolutely,
beverage.
we'll tipple a little bit. The Schisandra.
It's really nice. It's a really nice formula, and it's very helpful for skin conditions, because it does help to resolve heat in the liver. And I find it's a nice balance for me. It's one that I like to use. Swedish bitters, I would say, is more for the kind of bile duct gallbladder, whereas my other formula is more based on liver. Obviously we don't pick the digestive system apart. It's all part of the whole, isn't it?
Yeah. But the Schisandra, like you said, is the 5-flavor. It's that's a really unique herb. It's an herb I used to Chinese herbalism, and that's it's, how would I describe it? It's almost like it hits every part of the system. It's such a unique. It has every flavor in it, first of all, and so it stimulates every bit of the digestive system and every bit of the brain associated with the digestive system, and really, it's such a effective tonic. That's the way I look at That's the way I look at that herb.
I think I like it because it's also quite good, and don't quote me on this is just my experience of using it. It's quite good at mobilising sort of excess hormones out of the system, so too much cortisol, too much adrenaline. It helps your liver to process that more readily, and I think in combination with the rosemary, it's that nice balance of flavours, and then you've got the cold edge of the dandelion on there as well, but the dandelion has more of a emulsant effect. So it's not too, because bitters can be quite dry and cold, some of the formulas I find. So it's isn't it, balance out your formula so it's more rounded. And good old milk thistle, you couldn't really have a formula with that.
Milk thistle's so good. Milk thistle.
And Schisandra is really good for hot sweats and night. It's not one that you would immediately think of, but because it has the action on the liver in that particular way, I like to use it as for menopausal ladies. I find it quite nice too.
I'm afraid I have a train going by right this moment.
Well, it's really funny you should say that, because when you were talking, a massive rainstorm. I don't know if you could hear the rain in the background.
No. I'm trying to block out the sound of the. We have a conductor that likes to blow the horn at every single crossing, and he's to drive me insane, actually. It keeps me
What did you
awake
say
at
about things going wrong?
night. Oh, my word. Well, yeah, so we just talked about Cassandra. Uh, yeah, dandelion. It does is a coolish herb. I have actually I do one of my bitters formulas is what I call my cooling bitters formula, and I combine dandelion with burdock, gentian. Sometimes I use Oregon grape that I use as a substitute for gentian a lot because gentian doesn't grow. We have three varieties, but it's not very common here. You know, it's not like the Alps or somewhere where you're going to be running into it all the time.
Well, do
And
you know, we've got one at the end of our road.
have you?
Somebody's planted it as a beautiful street plant,
It's a
and
beautiful
people walk
plant.
past it
Yeah.
every day, and I think that is such a wonderful tree. It's so beautiful, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
And the colour of the tincture as well, when you,
Yeah.
oh, the beautiful yellow berberine.
Oh, yeah. And then what else should I put? There's something. Oh, mint. Just to round out the coolness, of the formula and give it a little aromatic. And it's really nice. It's really nice. I think
Yeah, I
it's.
think people read the word bitters and think, oh, but there are a whole range of bitters, aren't there, doing so many different things. And as you say, it's the nuance, isn't it, between what is it that you're trying to do with that formula.
Hmm.
So I think for some people, if they are very Vata, like an Ayurvedic wind constitution,
Right.
sometimes that can be, well, it's not always the right choice for them, is it? Because that can make them even colder and drier and exacerbate the symptoms.
Yeah.
Um,
But I think the old Angostura cocktail bitters. I think anybody can enjoy those. I
and they
mean,
sell it in our local supermarket now.
yeah, me too.
And people walk past it. Sometimes wonder how many of those they sell because I'm not sure people actually know how to use them.
But first of all, they're delicious. I mean, that's one of the tastiest of all the cocktail bitters. We have one here that comes out of Louisiana. It's one of the old formulas. I can't remember the name right now. But that it's sort of a licorice type of flavor mixed
Oh,
with a bitter.
like a ouzo type
Yeah,
thing.
it's sort of like that, but a little more bitter. It's more of a cocktail bitter.
But
But
isn't absinthe based on wormwood?
oh, absolutely, yeah. In fact, vermouth is Old German for wormwood. So that was one
So
of
lots of these spirits, but people didn't realise that that's what they were used for. When we say aperitif,
yeah,
it's to
yeah.
prepare your body for food. So
Peychaud is the old Louisiana brand of bitters. So it was a competition for Angostura, and they're both delicious. Really, very tasty. Angostura is more citrusy. It's got a lot of, I guess it's tangerine and tamarind in it and such. It's very tasty. That's definitely one of my favorites. So, y'all, this is the kind of thing you can learn from Sarah if you read her newsletter. You can tell how passionate we both are about these subjects and how we can just go back and forth for hours talking about this kind of stuff. But before we get much further, I want you to give everybody your websites, your URLs, how they can find you, what to look for, because you really are one of the best. I think one of the best herbal writers out there.
well, that's very generous. Thank you. I appreciate that. I do like writing, but I'm not. I would say that there are a lot cleverer people than I am. I think we all have our ways, don't we?
Well, I was speaking with Yolanda Joy a couple of
Oh,
weeks ago, and I said, Yolanda, you need to talk with Sarah Donaghue. You need to get her on one of your programs. She's all about marketing. She's all about how to do your newsletter. And I said, Sarah's newsletter is the best. You need to get her
well,
on
that's
there
very
to
kind. Thank
present.
you. I
So,
really enjoy. I love writing that newsletter, and I must admit, it is something that I really pour my passion into. I find it one of the most pleasurable aspects of my job. Um, and sometimes I'm just so full up with things that I get very excited about. I think, well, I just have to get it out of my head and put it onto paper. So it's quite a therapeutic way for me to download what I've been doing this week. It is called the Herbalist Diary. And when I look back on it, I think, oh, did I pick a very boring name for that? Maybe I could have been a little bit more inventive. But I do think about people like Mrs. Grieve and, Samuel Pepys and their diary. And I actually do like the name because it is really just what I'm doing every day. I write about, the seasons, the different things that are happening in the dispensary. So it's quite varied and diverse. I try to cover lots of different topics. So yeah, I really enjoy it, as I enjoy listening to your podcast. And you bounce off it one another, don't you? Sometimes you hear things that somebody else is writing about, and you think, oh, that's great, and go off down a rabbit hole and find out new things. So the herbal world is a very wonderful world to be a part of, and there are some wonderful, lovely people inspiring. I just feel lucky to be a part of it, really.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that. And you'll be starting your own podcast pretty soon, right?
Well, once I can get the technology up and running, we'll see how that goes. We won't announce that just yet. That's maybe for the new year.
Yeah, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Don't worry about that.
I might follow you up with that.
Well, so it's, I will say the Herbalist Diary because that's my pronunciation of the word. But for you, it's the Herbalist Diary. And you can find her on Substack. It's a great Substack newsletter. Is there a specific URL for that? Is it Substack.Sarah Donaghue or Donaghue or something?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I think I'm the only Herbalist Diary on Substack, so if you type in Substack and that, I'm sure it will pop up.
Okay, well, I'll put the URL in the show notes too. And your website
I do have a website as well, which is not updated as regularly, but I do post events and things on there, and my new books will be available on that website URL.
What's your new book?
I've written a book, actually. It's due to be published next year around about March time by Aeon Books. It's about iridology.
Oh, cool. Okay, we'll have to talk about that sometime too.
That's another whole
another rabbit hole to do. All right.
I'll send you a copy.
Well, y'all, you have listened to Sarah Donaghue, and I'm sure you will follow up and subscribe to her newsletter. You'll find it in the show notes, and I'll have her website as well. Sarah, thank you for doing this, and anytime you'd like to chat, just let me know.
Well, thank you. What a wonderful way to spend an afternoon.
Absolutely.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.